Hey, I'm Peter Franson from christiangeekcentral.com and Spirit Blade Productions. Here we are, the end of the DCEU with Aquaman, The Lost Kingdom. How does it close things out? Does it close things out? What is this final statement being made here, and is it going to be satisfying to fans of the DCEU as a whole? To Aquaman fans, well, that really kind of depends. Anyway, I'm Peter Franson. I think I said that already. Let's get into it. Aquaman and the Lost Kingdom. The what do you call it? The synopsis on IMDb says, having failed to defeat Aquaman the first time, Black Manta, still driven by the need to avenge his father's death, will stop at nothing to take Aquaman down once and for all. This time, Black Manta is more formidable than ever before, wielding the power of the mythic Black Trident, which unleashes an ancient and malevolent force. To defeat him, Aquaman will turn to his imprisoned brother Orm, the former king of Atlantis, to forge an unlikely alliance. Together they must set aside their differences in order to protect their kingdom and save Aquaman's family and the world from irreversible destruction. All right, so what is the basic feel of this thing? I had heard early on that James Wan, the director, was going to be leaning into something darker and like tapping into some of his horror background with this first one. I don't know what happened along the way, but it is not that at all. It really follows the buddy road trip format. These brothers are traveling together because they kind of have to, and they're clashing, and their relationship develops over time. There's plentiful action and adventure and spectacle along the way, but I never felt any stakes. That's always a problem for me. I mean, in that, like, if I don't feel stakes, I'm checked out of the movie. I was bored a lot of this movie. Between frequent CG actor replacement in action scenes, and costume and creature designs that would fit well, I think, in some live-action kids' movies, and a lack of noteworthy dramatic weight given to the challenges and dangers that they faced, it felt like a harmless carnival ride with frequent jokes that either failed to land for me. They just failed to land for me, except for in really rare cases. There were some brief beats of really heavy drama when, like, Arthur's family members are being threatened, but it felt like a different movie was being cut in very briefly, like, whoa, okay, okay, that moment's over. Now we're back to just the mostly rock'em sock'em action and some jokiness here and there, So there just wasn't time given to really feel the weight of the stakes that were being presented. The sole strong points for me in this movie were the beats given to family relationships. I am the father of two boys, and one of them was with me for the movie, and my son that watched it with me was the first to comment on the brotherhood themes on the drive home. Without me mentioning them or prompting him in any way, that really stood out to him as a significant strength and memorable factor of the movie, and I felt the same way. I didn't grow up. I had two sisters, so I never had a brother, but as the father of two boys, I so want them to love and care for each other, So I think I brought that with me to the theater, and my son brought his experience with him to the theater, and so we kind of helped the movie out in that regard, I think. But that doesn't mean that the movie isn't doing something good, despite the fact that it maybe depends a bit on what we bring to the theater with us. I mean, that's always the case with any movie. So, the other family elements I thought also had some good beats too, like the love of parents for children, the love of husbands for wives. Those had some brief, meaningful moments. So those were really the strong points for me in this experience. But those things were just way too few and far between to make this movie worth remembering for me. The best I can say for the story is that I think for big fans of the first movie, this one feels similar. And it also advances and brings closure to this Aquaman's story and his relationships. For those that are already strongly invested, this will probably feel like a very satisfying bow to tie up the character with as the DCEU, as it's been known since Man of Steel, comes to a close to pave the way for the DCU, James Gunn's new DC film continuity that will begin with Superman Legacy. And for those curious, in Aquaman, The Lost Kingdom, there's zero effort made to tie this movie to the reset of the universe, or to bring the universe to a close, or to explain the reset within canon itself. I get the impression from this that there's not going to be an in-canon explanation for a continuity reset. They had the opportunity to do that with the Flash movie. They didn't, and there was zero opportunity, or that provided or taken in Aquaman and the Lost Kingdom to provide an in-lore explanation for the continuity reset. I suppose they could do that at the beginning of Superman Legacy, but I really doubt they will at this point. I think they're completely severing ties as strongly as they could between these two continuities. So this is just an Aquaman movie doing its own thing. As far as the cast and the performances, the cast was mostly fine, but the pacing was, it gave almost zero time to acting moments outside of actually delivering dialogue. The most nonverbal acting moments were, I think, given to Dr. Shin, played by Randall Park, who was seemingly cast once more to play a one-note, presumably comedic, nerdy role, but as usual, I assume due to my admittedly narrow comedic tastes, I did not find him funny, and when he wasn't aiming for laughs, his performance style felt too unrealistic for me to care about his character at all. And that's a big problem because he's supposed to be a mostly innocent guy trapped living among the enemy. So I should be concerned for him and his situation and want him to get out of it, to survive, But I just didn't care. I didn't care if he survived at all because he just didn't seem like a real person to me. Although I have to comment on Jason Momoa's Aquaman. It's this biker metalhead take on Aquaman, as far as I know, has had no basis in the comics. But I have been pretty open to it from the beginning and really have appreciated a number of elements about it, a number of moments that it was given, maybe more so in Zack Snyder's Justice League than in Aquaman. Well, maybe in the first Aquaman movie there were moments. I don't know. It's been inconsistent, but I think it's been a worthwhile experiment. And I think given that the character of Aquaman is not known as having the most interesting personality in comics. He's fairly bland, I think, in that respect. I think that there's a lot of room to just kind of try something bold and creative like they did with Jason Momoa's Aquaman. And so I've really been on board with at least the experiment, even though the results have been a little bit mixed for me. But by the last scene in this movie, with Aquaman's last line, I definitely felt content to close the book on this worthy experiment, to let Aquaman now disappear for a while, to be reinvented again at a later time. I assume that, since his movie came at the very end of the DCEU, they're going to wait a good while before we see a cinematic representation of this character again. Probably, my guess would be it'll be at least 5 years before we see some other version of Aquaman on the big or small screen in live action. And I am content for that to be the case at this point. Okay, so stunts and visuals, lots of CG, but somehow it felt less grand in its spectacle compared to the first movie. My son made a similar comment on the drive home. But it still has creature variety and diverse visual wonders to put it on par with most Star Wars movies. And if that's a big selling point for you, I think that you're likely to be satisfied by that here. But as mentioned earlier, in my case, actor replacement sucked potential impact out of action scenes. Black Manta's costume still looks to me like it would fit very well on the set of a Power Rangers movie. I would have preferred a reinterpretation that kept the basic form but added texture and groundedness, more so, to both Manta's costume and Arthur's classic orange and green costume. And, CG creatures to me looked like exactly that, which never helps me enter into a fictional world. All right, is there anything of moral, philosophical, or spiritual significance going on in the themes of this thing that might be worth thinking about? For sure, family and brotherhood specifically are major themes. I thought many times about my own boys and how I so want them to love and support each other, which they do, but still with plenty of conflict in the mix. And my prayer for them for years now and for years to come has been and will be that as they grow older, they become adults, that they're able to have a kind of deep bond that gets past, some of the rough edges that they're experiencing now as teenagers. And I think that this movie takes these two brothers, and it's, for most families, it's going to be a very extreme conflict and background in terms of their reason for butting heads, but it still parallels what I think is a very common thing among siblings and probably brothers in particular. I think this movie is a great and natural opportunity to reflect on the bonds of family and what those bonds mean when family members don't get along or when they see the world very differently. I think it has the potential to remind people that, they do really love and care about their family members, brothers especially, and that those relationships are worth fighting and sacrificing for. All right, I have no idea what your tastes are in movies, but if I were a time traveler, I'd go back in time and say, Peter, skip this one for now. Watch it with Asher when it's cheaper. Redbox, streaming service when it's available there, something like that. Not worth the price of the theatrical experience, and not something that brings any closure to the DCEU or helps transition to what James Gunn and company are cooking up. For your own tastes and preferences, it's completely skippable, but you'll be glad that you shared this experience with one of your boys. It's rated PG-13 for sci-fi violence and some language. And those are all my thoughts for now on Aquaman and the Lost Kingdom. As always, love to get your thoughts and reactions. You can put those in the comments below. Please like, share, subscribe, click that bell to stay connected. I want to thank the Spirit Blade Insiders for supporting me and all of my content. You can get info about the benefits of joining over at patreon.com/Spirit Productions. Then I hope you'll check out our podcast and stay connected to all CGC content over at christiangeekcentral.com as we continue to geek out and seek the truth. For more chat about geek entertainment, answers to your questions, and news from the wider world of Christian geekery, get the Christian Geek Central podcast today on iTunes and other podcast services.